Beyond Goodbye is a podcast that explores dying, death, and grief, and therefore may contain sensitive or distressing material that could be triggering for some individuals and is not suitable for all listeners. Therefore, listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to Beyond Goodbye, a show that empowers listeners to engage with death and grief in a healthy and transformative way. My name is Angela Sturm, and I am your host. In today's episode, we will discuss ways in which our friends, coworkers, and community in general can support those of us grieving. But first, we begin with a real-life story of loss. And the story we have for you today is about a bright, intelligent, successful man who, unbeknownst to those closest to him, suffered in silence, ultimately leading to his death. Our guest is his sister, Kelly, and this is her story, as well as our second episode, titled Death by Suicide. There are a lot of things we cannot choose or control, like the fact we are all going to lose a loved one. Some people are able to cope with their grief and eventually find life again after loss, while others seem unable to do so. My guest today, Kelly, is one of those who's been able to adjust to life without her brother. But as we all know, it's a hard road to travel, and sometimes friends, coworkers, even family struggle to support us as we navigate our new normal. We want to talk about that today and hopefully help, or at least provide some insight to help guide those meaning us well so that the griever's needs are met and the supporter's attempts are understood. But first, let's welcome Kelly and hear about her loss journey. Kelly, welcome.
Thank you, Angie.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit. Well, tell us your story.
Sure. Well, I am Kelly, and in 2015, April 8th, 2015, I lost my brother, my older brother and best friend, to suicide. Um, I still feel him and, think about him so often. Um, it's hard to believe it's been 8 years.
Yeah.
So he was, like I said, kind of the epitome of big brother. Um, Took care of me, and he was a father and a husband and um, a businessman, and was also struggling with depression and addiction, um, and things that we as a family knew just the surface of what he was struggling with. And, uh, his suicide, I think, shocked us. But also, there's this feeling of what could we have done? What more could we have done? So I think the complicated part of losing someone to suicide and being a suicide loss survivor is that you do feel all of these feelings of guilt, also of anger. Um, and, part of my journey through the grieving process is really learning how to handle those emotions as they come and go. Um, there's this overwhelming sense of loss, but also of um, just frustration, and why didn't he get the help that he needed? And the answer to that is that he felt he couldn't. He didn't feel like there was hope or help out there. And yeah, it's been a rough road. Thankfully, I have had a lot of support and with my friends and family. And I've really had to lean in to also professional help. Um,
Mhm.
because I had never dealt with this kind of loss before.
Sure. Well, first off, I'm really sorry for your loss, and I know our listeners are as well. I've not had a family member die due to suicide, so I don't know what that's like. It has to be awful. You said that you had a lot of support from, your friends and family. So how did your friends and coworkers react to the news and, in terms of like supporting you? Like what did they do that you felt was good and maybe some things that weren't so good for you?
Sure. I think everyone kind of rallied around us, and kind of, made sure that we had all of the basics, all of the basic things that we needed, that we were eating and that we were taking care of, things for the service and that we didn't need support in that. I remember his best friend came with us to the funeral home, and helped us like write the obituary and kind of did those tasks that seemed so hard in the moment,
Mhm.
because we were still in such shock.
Right.
Um, I think we all kind of didn't know how to deal with it. I don't think people knew how to support us, because they didn't want to say the wrong thing. They didn't want to be insensitive. And really, what I needed most is just someone by my side and someone that knew Bill. So what I found comforting was spending time with his friends and hearing stories and laughing and remembering all of the good times. And I felt like if I didn't start like cataloging all of these memories, that they were going to go away. And so it was really important for me to kind of just surround myself with everyone that loved him. And that was what was most helpful. And
Mhm.
as time goes on, and you lose someone, life goes on. And I think what's important for supporters to remember is that yes, life has gone on, but it has gone on without, my brother. It has gone on, and I still feel that loss, very, very, it's very real every day, and I still need the support. So I think advice for supporters would be to continue to check in. It doesn't matter if it's been a day or 8 years, I still need a consistent check in. And that can just be, hey, how are you doing? Or, hey, I thought of Bill today and this is why. Um,
Yeah.
that that's what's helpful to me.
Yeah. I found after the death of my kids and my mom, like you, I loved hearing the stories. I'd have strangers message me or come to my home and tell me things that I had no idea my kids were doing. They were adults, so I didn't live with them as they were adults, and you don't know what their adult life was like what they were doing outside of what, the visiting and so forth. And to hear these stories of things that they'd done for their community and the people, I really, really liked that. It really made me feel good and gave me a rounder picture of them. And I like what you said about cataloging the memories. I love that. I actually have been writing, I call it a book, but it's more of a journal for my children's children, my grandchildren, about the memories of their mom and dad, and from birth, and stories and funny stories and things that are good for me, helpful and healing, but also would be, I think is going to be a good thing for them. um, I did get a lot of people saying, which is valid. I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. I have had some people say it will get better, but we know that's relative. My dad used to get real angry when people would ask him if he was okay, really angry. And he'd be like, of course I'm not okay. And I had to remind him that, people don't know what to do. I mean, death and grief, it's an intense energy. It's not easy to be around, especially when you don't know what to do to help. So they feel so helpless. Um, and, and he knew that, but he was just so in the moment of his grief that he had he'd get angry. Did you ever get angry yourself? Like, did you find yourself like there were times when I would get really angry too when somebody had done something or I felt like they were making it about them. And I had to remind myself that they knew my kids and my mom, and they also have their own grief, a little different, but trying to give them some grace for not doing what I felt like they should be doing for me. And I didn't even really know what I needed to be done for me though.
Yes, I can relate to that. For me, it was more because another thing that I did early on with my grief is I educated myself on suicide awareness
Mm,
and got really involved with different organizations. Um, I spoke publicly about my story to other suicide loss survivors. And and in doing this, I became educated. And so when I would talk to friends and loved ones who didn't have the knowledge that I had about how to talk about someone who has died by suicide, one of the things that would really bother me is when they would say Bill committed suicide. Um, for those that don't know, like that's it's not something that we say someone died by suicide because this is not an act that they are committing in their right mind. This is not a crime. This is an act of desperation that happens. And so I think the kind of the um, just the lack of awareness around really bothered me and made me angry. And then some of the insensitivity that would come along with that. So, when people, for example, would, oh, I could just shoot myself. This is so bad. I'll just why don't you just shoot me? This meeting is so long, and they'll make like a gesture of shooting themselves, and so it gave me opportunities to educate and um, raise awareness, which is a good thing. I still am, trying to raise awareness. I have a tattoo of a semicolon on my wrist, which, means, period, no period, just a semicolon because just
mm.
pause. And it's become a symbol of suicide awareness that I love talking to people about. When they mention, oh, what does that tattoo mean? I get to tell them about Bill and his story. So,
Wow. That's a lot of people can't do that. To just many people shut down. And so for you to, being the sister and the baby sister and all that he has done and represents and meant to you to be able to go out there and I mean, really you advocated for him after his passing to help maybe hopefully prevent some other family to have to go through that. And at the same time, you were healing, you were on this path of healing, and this is the way that you healed. I think it's really admirable, and I have a lot of respect for that, going out and doing that, because that's a hard thing to do, and to continue doing that and to offer that to people, I'm proud of you.
oh, thank you.
I think that's it gives me goosebumps, when to say that and to hear you talk about what you're doing for your brother even now. Um, because back then I didn't really know what I needed. Um, and we've talked about this before that it's hard to know when you're in the middle of it. And as I look back in retrospect, it really was just people letting me tell them about my children and my mom. And even if that meant that I was going to cry uncontrollably, to be okay to be around that you don't have to fix it. When I look
Yep.
back at before I had lost anyone and being around people who had friends who had, I've always been a fixer. Um, and I always want to fix things and make it right and make it okay. And so that's what I tried to do was, oh, I'm going to cheer them up, get them to not think about it. And I think it was more really around my discomfort of being around somebody who was that intensely sad. And so my wanting to fix it and change it was for me more than it was for them. Now that I'm on the other side of that, I understand how I feel bad now that I had done that because it wasn't the right thing. I wasn't done, obviously, with malice or intent to harm. And so I know that the supporters out there, even if some one of us gets angry with you, we need you. We need your support. Um, we're just understand we're in a different place, and we now, as I've progressed, I understand that you didn't know what to say, you don't know what to
Yep.
do, and for me, it is now especially, and it was then too. I recognize it now. I did need somebody to listen to me, not to tell me it's going to be okay because it never is. I'll never be
Right.
okay again. I have a really, really good friend. Her name is Aislinn, and I like to use her as an example of really what I needed, what I think is a good example for anyone grieving. She would she would ask, did I need anything? But she knew that I didn't know what I needed. She also knew I wouldn't reach out, because that's just not my personality. It never has been to reach out for help, which is unfortunate because we should not be ashamed to do that. And that's more of a shaming myself. But she would just randomly just come over to my home. She works in the medical field, so she'd be work 16-hour shift at the hospital, show up after that before going home to her own family and knock on my door and just come in and say, you know what, I'm coming to check in on you. And this particular day I'm thinking of, I was not having a good night. I was upset. And she came in, she just sat with me and she let me cry. She just put her arm around me and I cried and cried. She didn't say a word. She just held on to me and let me cry. And that's all I
Yeah.
needed. And it felt good. It felt validating. And it felt like
Yeah.
I feel like grief is a real, lonely journey. It's something you can only do alone. But that moment made me feel like I wasn't alone. She was Jasmine's godmom and has known my family. We've known each other for, my gosh, 30, almost 30 years. And for her to be able to do that, it was something I really needed. And even now, just last week, I was leaving for work in the morning, early in the morning, and I come outside and there's a plant on my step with a card. And she had left me a plant. She had helped me clear out Jasmine's apartment. And Jasmine had this plant there that was on its last stem, if you will. I thought she had thrown it away, but she didn't. She had kept it and she nursed it and brought it back to life. And it was this big plant now. It was beautiful. And she put a little card and said, I revived this plant for you. It was in Jasmine's apartment. And I want this to be a reminder of you of life. And I'm summarizing, it's, somewhere along those lines. And she says, I
Yeah.
love you and have a good day. And I was like, oh my gosh, I brought the plant to work. It's on my desk. I thought that was just so beautiful and a really great way, even right now. And it's been just, 2 years to say, I'm thinking of you. I support you. I love you.
Yeah, and I think when you were talking, what kind of stuck out for me as something to tell our supporters, or if you're supporting someone who's going through a loss, is that nobody's grief journey is going to be the same. Everyone is different,
Right.
but the one thing that is the same for all of us is that the one thing that we want, you can't give us our loved one back.
Right.
And um so just know that it's okay not to know what to do, because you can't do what we want you to do, and we may not know, but
Right.
just doing little things like that. Or I know one of the things that's been helpful for me is friends, like if they're driving by something, there's this mile marker that goes down to where we grew up, and if they pass it on 94, they'll take a picture of it and say, hey, thinking of you and Billy. Just little things like that, like to know that there's people out there every day thinking about my brother.
Yeah.
And that really that really means a lot.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I recognize because we were just talking about this, how difficult it is to be around those of us who are grieving. Like I said earlier, the energy is intense and it can make a lot of people uncomfortable. Um, and we understand that. So hopefully the supporters that are listening understand I'm not it's not my intent to make you feel bad or that you're not doing the right thing, because we do need you. It's just bringing light to some of the ways, well, what we've learned in our own lost journey, those things that have really helped us. And then maybe down the road, one day, if you have to support again, or you're still supporting someone, just to give you some insight into what has really been helpful for us. Would you agree, Kelly?
I would. I would. And I think, it's okay to for supporters to take a break,
Yes.
take care of yourself, don't always feel like you need to be there. Everybody needs to take care of themselves, because then you can't support. If you're not taking care of yourself, you can't be a support. So know what you need to as a supporter, and know, if you need a break, because I think when people get overtired and you feel overburdened or whatever it is, that can complicate things as well. So take care of yourself first so you can be a good support,
Yeah,
um,
that's great
for that
advice.
person.
That's great advice. Um, gosh, these podcast interviews, they go so fast. It's only my second one, and I feel like they go by so fast. This was, a really good conversation. Um, we hope that we've been able to provide our support listeners with some suggestions on how to help, when we know you're also feeling very helpless. But our time on the show today has come to an end. Kelly, I want to thank you so much for, being vulnerable. And I hope you don't mind if I share this, but Kelly was a little nervous to come on and to tell her story. And I want to appreciate that she's done that and allowed herself to be vulnerable, because what we're trying to do here is to get people to have these tough conversations, to get it out there. It does help to talk about it. And this is a little, different scale. It's not necessarily family and friends and people we know. We're talking to strangers on here. And we want to make sure that, you know, we're taking the step to do it and you can too. And so
Mhm.
I want to thank you so much, Kelly, for coming on and doing that. Um, and, you know, learn more about how to support someone who's grieving the loss of a loved one.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you starting this podcast. I think it's going to help. It's helped me just in the first episode and through our conversations about this episode, and I know it's going to help other people as well.
We hope so. Next week, we will ask the question, what is death? If you or anyone you know is contemplating suicide, please, please, please reach out to the free 24-hour suicide hotline at 988. You also might be interested in a site called Mental Health is Health, and that site is mentalhealthishealth.us. This site is an MTV initiative rooted in the reality that we all have mental health and need to take care of it like we do our own physical health. It aims to normalize conversation, create connection and resources, and inspire action to mental health. I went out to the site. It's really easy to navigate and lots of good stuff out there, folks. I really encourage you to go out there. You can find all the source material and links in my show notes. Please be sure to hit subscribe and like, and we look forward to meeting again next week. Bye, all.